Please take a few minutes to introduce yourself in the chat. We always like to know who's joining us and why you're here. What inspired you to come today? What do you hope to get from this meeting? While you're doing that, I'm going to take a few minutes to give a shout out to our 2022-23 WEEA sponsors. We did change our sponsorship timeline to fiscal year. It just seems to work out better for both water and energy providers. So this is the first meeting that we've had of this fiscal year. Thank you, and a big shout out to Metropolitan Water District of Southern California, Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, our very new sponsor this year, Eastern Municipal Water District, Water Replenishment District of Southern California, and Western Municipal Water District. We also have significant support from California Environmental Education Foundation, Big Picture Learning, and California Community Colleges. We'll go over some of our basic guidelines. For those of you who have been with us for a while, they are the same for this meeting. In the Zoom application, please make sure your screen name is correct and include your organization. It's so much easier for us to call on you when your name is there and not a phone number or not your whoever's computer it is that you're borrowing for the day. So please change your screen name and include your organization. We ask that everyone remain muted unless presenting or asking a question. It just helps us stay focused, keeps the distractions to a minimum because we have a really exciting day for you and we don't want you to miss anything. Although we will never host this meeting as a webinar, it is very important that we communicate with each other, that we share ideas. This alliance is yours. This leadership alliance is all yours. So we want you to share ideas. We want you to question things. We want you to help others answer questions that they might have. So please take the chat opportunity to introduce yourself to each other and help each other along through this presentation, especially if you're very excited about something. And then raise your hand via the Zoom application if you'd like to ask a question. For those who need it, closed captioning is available. So we just wanted to make sure to emphasize that. We've had a request for that in the past. So closed captioning is there if you need it. I'd like to introduce our WEEA support team. How things have changed. In 2020, we had myself and one part-time person, but as the years have gone by and as we've gotten a little more clear about what our intentions are, we were able to include my entire public affairs team as a support team for WEEA. So if anything happens today during the meeting, if you have burning questions, this is the group that's supporting us today, answering questions like, will all of the materials and the recording be shared after the meeting? The answer to that is yes. But these guys can help you along if you're having technical difficulties. So just shoot one of them a message and they're there to walk you through it. My name is Tiffany Baca. I'm the Public Affairs Manager for the Municipal Water District of Orange County. I have the extreme pleasure and honor of leading the team I just shared with you. And I also lead the Water Energy Education Alliance. MODOC has been doing that since 2020, and it's been quite the journey. I've learned an awful lot, as has my team, and I hope all of you have as well. And we continue to offer a lot of good resources for you to take back and share with others and help you develop partnerships. That's kind of what we do. I'm also a member of the California Environmental Literacy Initiative, and that is a group of wonderful people working very hard to ensure equitable access to all California students to quality environmental education. Why does that matter? Because water is a key component of the environment. And when we connect students to the environment they live in, whether it be a dense forest or a beautiful beach filled with marine life, or whether it be an asphalt playground and a cityscape, there's an environment there for everyone. When our young people tell us that they're worried about the future and about their role, about protecting it or saving it, we have to alleviate some of those concerns by empowering them to make those connections early, to start questioning what the problems surrounding them might be and finding solutions at a very young age. So that's environmental literacy in a nutshell. A little over a year ago, I also mentioned we're all advocates for industry jobs. This is part of what we do. And so I wanted to share something with you that excites me about my job. And I'll do that every single time. And I encourage you, when you give presentations or you're talking to others, you don't just share what your job title is, because when we really think about it, kids don't care. I don't even know what an analyst does. But when you talk about your job and the things that make you get up every morning and face the day, that's the things that's going to inspire them to join us in this really incredible career. So I brought the 2022 Water Awareness Poster Contest Award Ceremony to this group because water and energy providers, we love our poster contests. Ours has been running for over 30 years, and we had the same contractor, our education program contractor, for 14 years, so over a decade. We've been doing the same thing, which wasn't bad. It was something that we could still be proud of. However, it was an indoor experience. We had elected officials join us to present these framed posters to students and with their families in attendance. So there really wasn't a big connection to what we're hoping to get to the bottom of, and that is, why should the environment, or why should good water stewardship matter to you? So we brainstormed and we came up with this incredible new program this year, a new ceremony location. Our friends of Shipley Nature Center hosted for us. It's an outdoor environment, so we had a full day of outdoor exploration for winners and their families. We had an outdoor art walk and a native plant scavenger hunt. We had 4 hands-on learning stations that again drove back to why water should matter to you, from the smallest of things like vermicomposting or nature journaling, actually observing outdoors and taking that with you so you understand what your role is. I got to MC this year. It's my first time as an MC, and I loved it. It was an outdoor award ceremony where students spoke in their own words to 40 winners and their families, their siblings, their teachers, about why protecting and preserving water is important. And this was really powerful, because when you hand over that discussion to the next generation, not only will they surprise you, but that spoken word will mean more and be more impactful than anything that we can say, even though we say this day in and day out, because we know now that they got it. Why am I bringing this to you? Not just because you all host poster contests, or many of you do, but this is also a great opportunity for us to talk about careers while students and families are engaged and they're excited. They've had a great day. They're feeling very proud of themselves. We're offering this interesting education where they're getting their hands dirty and they're learning a lot. And then they're looking and saying, well, how can I do what you do? Or the person who is talking to us about everything it takes to get water to Orange County, how do I get into that job? So just kind of having you think a little bit about how you can use your events to engage young people in a conversation very early. You see this little girl here, very early, about careers in water. We have hosted a Girl Scouts event about a year ago, and one of those Girl Scouts immediately decided she wanted a career in water. How cool was that? So my question for you today is to consider your events, whether you host them yourselves or you participate in them, your contest, community events. Please use the chat so that we can, again, see where everyone's at. Where are you using these opportunities, all these events that you host, to plant a seed about great careers in water, wastewater, and energy? Are your events, if you sit back and think about them, are they truly engaging? Is this something that you've been doing for a very long time? Like our poster contest, it's been around for 14 years of the same indoor location. Or could they stand a refresh? And if you were to refresh your career, your events, what might you do better? And just take a moment to think about that. And then please share in the chat what your thoughts are. Are you using these prime opportunities? Are your events truly engaging? Are there things that you can do better? this is our agenda for today. We always like to let you know where you're at. So if you have to drop off or you have a distraction, that you know where you're jumping in at any time. We've done our welcome and introductions. I'm going to give a leadership update in just a moment. We have a BAYWORK presentation that I'm so excited about, and I'm sure you guys are excited about too. We had a lot of interesting questions, and I've seen the presentation that you're going to receive today, and it's inspiring. And I think it'll give us a lot of ideas about what we might be able to do here in the Southland. 10:30, we're going to take a break. 10:40, good news and announcements. So if you have something to share, this is your prime opportunity. I've heard from a few people, but it doesn't mean that you had to tell me in advance. If you have something to share with this group, particularly related to the work that we do together, you'll have an opportunity to do that. We're going to go into our breakout groups, and we're going to do something a little bit different, which I'll share with you a little later today. And then if there's time, and we do this every time, if we have a speaker that really needs some additional attention, we will just cut out the regional share outs, because we're all in those breakout rooms, and we use Padlet to capture our ideas and our thoughts and our discussion. So if we need to kill regional share outs, it's totally fine, but this is what the plan is. And then we'll close at noon. Our leadership update today, we've had some really cool things happen in the last couple of weeks, at the last year. I brought to this group a year ago that the Centers of Excellence for Labor Market Research agreed to do a statewide water and wastewater workforce needs assessment survey for us. And obviously it's not just for us. This is a statewide water and wastewater workforce needs assessment survey, and we're all very excited about this. We had put together an advisory, so we at least had one person from every region participate in the development of the survey and answer questions and ask questions as we went along and provide contact lists, that sort of thing. So the advisory was myself from MODOC, or Orange County, and WEEA, Southern California, Elizabeth, who is our speaker today, from BAYWORK, Scott Goodall from IE Works, your friend and mine, Dr. Adrian Hightower from Metropolitan Water District of Southern California. And then a year ago, we had a really engaging speaker whose name is Don Jones, and he's with the Center for Water Studies, and he works very closely with the San Diego County Water Authority. So Don participated for that region in this advisory. We just had a meeting very recently. We had over 600 industry respondents to this survey. One of the reasons that number is so high is that the State Water Resources Control Board sent out my email. And thank you again, Scott Goodall, for introducing me to the State Water Resources Control Board contact, because before that big push, we had about 135, and the number was climbing slowly, but we have a really good sample for this survey. I'm excited about that. And we have 30 plus educational institutions who provide some sort of training for water, wastewater jobs. And so those are community colleges, and that's a component of this survey. The Centers of Excellence will be our next speaker, which we're working out a date now, so it's to be determined, but I'll make sure that everyone has that information in advance so you can put it on your calendars, because you won't want to miss it. They're going to talk about what the process is, obviously what the survey results were, and then they're going to provide recommendations to us to make things better. And that's really always what we hope for something big like this. This is a really big survey. We're really excited about that. We should have results either by late November or early December, which makes it a little challenging to host a leadership roundtable around that time because of the holidays. So we're working our best to come up with a date that makes sense for this entire group so nobody misses anything. And then the second update is the water and energy career brochures. I hope that you've seen this. We're going to drop some links in the chat, not only to access the brochures, but also to aqua articles. I actually have two aqua articles, one for the COE labor market research survey, and then one for the water and energy career brochure. So if you have questions about that and I haven't fully answered that, there are a couple of articles that can help kind of expand, which will then allow you to share with others what we're doing here. So We heard loud and clear, we don't have anything to hand students or counselors, or how do we begin engaging our young people while they're still in school in our careers. So this was one of our deliverables last year. These are free to everyone and it can be personalized with your logo. Our sponsors we went ahead and put our sponsor logos on them, and we're actually doing some print work for our sponsors. And that's just one of the benefits of being a WEEA sponsor. But for everyone else, while you can print them in your office, we do recommend you send them to a printer for the best quality brochures. The hard work has already been done for you. They were written for middle school to entry-level college students, and there was a lot of research done to understand these young people and what is it that they're looking for when they're considering a career. And some of the things that hit the top of the list were the environment, sustainability, having some meaningful work, being able to represent communities, and having a work-life balance. So in addition to the things that we already know and we love about our careers, you have great benefits forever and ever. We have a really great salary range that some students can't even wrap their minds around. When a lot of these young kids are entering the workforce, they don't have bills. They don't understand, to them, $25 an hour is good. We've got this salary range that is better than that. And that's why our jobs are so great, because we will provide an opportunity for everyone who's interested to have a great life. Like, these jobs are golden. So I've already heard from a lot of people how they're using them, and I wanted to give you some ideas today if you haven't already began using them. We have some folks that are posting them on their web pages. Some are using the content in them or the brochures themselves for social media. They're using them to engage with schools, with school counselors, with community partners. They're using them at special events and career fairs. And I've heard someone is going to use them alongside job listings, which I think is pretty cool. If you'd like to share whether or not you've heard of these brochures and or how you're using them, please drop that in the chat. If you have a different way that you're using them, or you've received them and have plans for that, please let us know how you're using them. We'd love to hear that. And my third update is about Imagine a Day Without Water. Imagine a Day Without Water, again, as I mentioned back when I was talking about our poster contest, you are a leader in this work. You're here today because part of what you do is promote these jobs. And we all know, well, we'll find out with our labor market research survey, we all know that the silver tsunami in the next decade is going to hit everyone really hard. And it's our jobs to make sure that we do whatever we can to encourage our young people, no matter where they live, no matter where they see themselves, that a job in water, wastewater, energy is a good job. And Imagine a Day Without Water is just another opportunity to do that. It's October 20th. So just think for a moment. If you are wondering, how is another way that I can engage our young people about imagining a day without water? We've seen the campaign for 8 years now, and we know that there's, some people do events and some people host meetings, but I want you to take just a minute and look around the room and just pick an object. It really doesn't matter what that object is. I'm looking at bottles of wine, lucky me, a table, a microwave, a pot, the floor. And I want you to think about how water was used to create that object. Any object in the room. Take a moment to think about that. And then go a little bit deeper. How was water used to transport that item to your home? Go a little bit deeper. How was water used for the packaging for that object? Go a little deeper. If you were visiting a store and you bought this item, or it was delivered to your doorstep, does that doorstep exist without water? Does that business exist without water? So this is one of the ways that you can encourage people to kind of dive a little bit deeper and really understand the value of water, that there's not a single thing in your home or your office or your neighborhood that doesn't need water in some way or another to exist. So I wanted to share that with you. And then the next thing is, because we hear about Imagine a Day with Water, I'm telling you that there's ways to infuse career opportunities in that, but it's probably better if we give you a toolkit. So we took some time to put together a toolkit for Imagine a Day Without Water. This can be used by anybody. It isn't simply industry, it is also for our education partners, our community partners. The toolkit includes a background. We also have campaign tips for success, how you can engage your networks, ideas of ways that you can generate interest. We also have a sample news release. Again, you can mix words up, you can use it as it is, but this informs the world that you are participating in Imagine a Day Without Water. There is a form on their website that you can sign up and say, yes, I'm participating. And at this time, 1,500 water providers, actually 1,500 organizations, excuse me, are participating in this annual campaign. And then we created a couple of social media posts for you so that you could see that it's not just imagining a day without water, but who are the people behind this valuable service, this essential service that make things happen. And perhaps, have you considered a career in water? Have you considered being that person who ensures that people receive clean, healthy, safe water every day? So there are 4 social media posts. Again, use them how you like. Mix the words around if you like, add your logo if you like, if you can find room and it makes sense. But all of those are available through a toolkit, which is linked here, and we dropped the link in the chat for you. So if you do use them, let us know how you use them. Let us know if you enjoy them or if you have any ideas for another resource that we can share with you. Next up, let me take a quick look. Next up, we're going to do a poll. Can we launch the poll, please? Perfect. So you'll notice in this presentation, it's a little different than the other presentations. We have used photos from Department of Water Resources showing people at work. I've talked to countless numbers of people, and it is nearly impossible to find photos of people at work. So how are we supposed to promote this? How are we supposed to grab photos quickly to share on social media or on brochures or whatever it is that we're doing, presentations when we're trying as leadership to drive this conversation forward? So the poll today is, would you be interested in a shared photo library of real people working in the field, real people? And if so, A, please send links for DWR's photo drive, which we'll share. B, sign me up to have someone shadow my team or field crew. I'm going to throw this out. If you have a field crew that you think not only will you get the photos, but we're going to send a professional photographer to your organization so that we can start building a photo library of real people in water, wastewater, and energy doing real work. So we have a resource that we can all share. So if this is something that you're interested in, if you would agree to have us have a professional photographer come to your organization, you would receive all of the photos, and then we would drop those photos in a shared library so that everyone has access to those, and we can continue doing our work and showing pictures that aren't sort of water people or energy people, or there's a hard hat there. I think I think we've all seen a lot of the same photos recycled, and preferably too, let's just start showing some diversity, right? We want to make sure that everyone is comfortable and empowered to take these jobs. So if you have a diverse workforce, we really do want to get photos of these real people doing real work. So let us know. And if that's something that you'll agree to, it's something that we're going to start working on. And then of course, both A, B, and C, and then D, if you need the chat. And Sarah, can you share those poll results? Are they happening in real time? There we go. Okay, so it looks like we have lots of requests for the DWR photo drive. So we're going to drop that in the chat. That's a ton. And then it looks like we have some other comments in the chat to explain. And even if we have one person who agrees to us having a professional photographer come, we will probably take you up on that offer. So thank you for allowing us to have that poll and gather that information. We appreciate it. And the presentation you've all been waiting for. I'd like to welcome, and please help me welcome, Elizabeth Toups, who is the new BAYWORK manager. She has 25 years of experience leading workforce education and training strategies. And BAYWORK, you know, many years ago when I first started thinking about this work and got looped into it, BAYWORK just stood out as a shining example of what is possible. So I'm just very grateful to Elizabeth for coming today and sharing a little bit about BAYWORK, and I hope you're as inspired as I have been to maybe incorporate some of the strategies that they use to build resources for their consortium to offer training sessions and to engage young people in careers in water and wastewater. So Elizabeth, thank you for joining us, and please take it away.
Thank you so much. And I'm going to share my screen here. Good morning, everybody. I'm Elizabeth Toups. I'm the senior manager and with BAYWORK. And BAYWORK is the first thing I'll say is that BAYWORK is a regional industry consortium of water wastewater agencies in the Bay Area. About 42 agencies. We've been around for 11 years now. And it's a great example of an industry-led consortium that has, that any success that BAYWORK has had has been because of really in-kind support from leaders in the water and wastewater industry, as well as some really smart collaboration with local community colleges, community-based organizations, like the one that I technically work for, Jewish Vocational Service in the Bay Area. What I'll also say, my presentation today is going to be about BAYWORK. You should also know that Southern California is growing a very similar consortium that many of you have heard of, i.e. Works. And several of you on the call have really been instrumental in getting IE Works off the ground. Most notably, Adrian with Metropolitan, Amanda with Eastern Municipal Water District, Jasmine Hall has been just a real stalwart in terms of our work in the Inland Empire. And Jasmine's on the board at Inland Empire Utilities Agency. And then Karen with San Bernardino Valley Municipal Water District. And if I missed anybody, let me know in the chat. But I just wanted to call out those Southern California leaders who are really working, with so much effort to kind of build a similar model in the Inland Empire. And so we're proud of our sort of sister consortium in the Inland Empire, and I'll point to some of the similar work that we're doing in the Inland Empire. IE Works has only been around for a little over a year, but BAYWORK is doing everything we can to help get IE Works going and as and thriving, much like BAYWORK is doing in the Bay Area. So why is there such a thing as BAYWORK? Like I said, BAYWORK's been around for about 11 years, and the consortium came together initially, not surprisingly, by 3 of the larger agencies in the Bay Area: San Francisco Public Utilities Commission, East Bay Municipal Utilities District, and Valley Water were some of the initial founders of BAYWORK, and they really identified a gap in operational resilience that wasn't being addressed, and that was workforce. And they were looking at, as many industries have been looking at over the years, this thing called the silver tsunami. They knew that there were going to be retirements on the horizon, and a lot of them, and there really needed to be more attention paid to this issue of workforce reliability. And at the same time, the industry also identified, and increasingly so over the last few years, a need to really focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion. As a new generation of workers is coming into the industry, what can we, industry, educators, community leaders, labor unions do to ensure that that next generation of workers looks more like, to be quite honest, the ratepayers of the agencies who are providing this life-saving service to residents in their region. And thirdly, there was a recognition that as the industry grows, we need to continue to train our incumbent workers, our current employees, to make sure their certifications are in line with what an individual agency needs, and to address things like digital learning, digital competencies, which is increasingly important and to all of us, including in the water and wastewater industry. Just checking the chat. Okay, so BAYWORK's core value is really right here. Our industry cannot achieve operational reliability without workforce reliability. And the good news for us as educators is that there's a lot of work in the water and wastewater industry that really has to be done by humans. And how are we going to make sure that we have a ready supply of those critical occupations, especially those, to be quite honest, that require less than a four-year college degree. Certainly there's a lot of attention paid to engineers and some of the scientists or lab positions that are also critical. With BAYWORK and also with IEWorks, our focus is really on, by and large, the maintenance and operation trades positions, where we've had the most success in terms of moving the needle on some of the workforce issues. So what does BAYWORK provide for our 42 signatory agencies? As I said before, we're providing training for both staff and leaders. For instance, we have a number of training efforts geared towards HR issues. We're certainly providing an opportunity for agencies to network with each other, to compare experiences on training and other workforce-related issues. Recruiting through JVS's job board. At any given time, we have a really nice variety of positions that are posted on the BAYWORK job board, and also teacher externships. And I want to, I'll spend a little bit of time now talking about teacher externships, and I'm always happy to talk more about this. I know that there's some interest in this topic. And you might say, why does BAYWORK care about training teachers? Because teachers are, as we all know, they have a big impact on young people, especially middle school and high school students, where we tend to focus. And especially those STEM teachers are really eager to look for opportunities to contextualize their curriculum to jobs that are in high demand, and especially jobs like in the water and wastewater industry that are such high quality jobs. So what we do is we partner with a local education organization called Ignited, and to identify local school districts, mostly high school teachers, but we've also provided externships for middle school teachers, and offered those teachers either during the summer or during their spring break an opportunity to spend a day or a week with a local water agency. So for instance, we might have a group of 8 to 10 teachers focused on one sort of geographic area, let's say the San Jose area, and over the course of a week, they'll spend time at between 1 and 3 water and wastewater agencies during that week. The teachers receive a stipend at the end of the week, and during that week, they're talking to frontline workers, and they're developing lesson plans that are contextualized to the water and wastewater industry. And if anybody's interested in learning more or seeing some of that curriculum, I'd be glad to send you a link to so you can see it, some of the curriculum that teachers have developed. It's really, everything from math and geography and to the sciences, of course. Anyway, it's kind of a cool program. So what and who is BAYWORK? Here's a short video that will show.
We are living on an increasingly thirsty planet. Climate change, urban and rural development, and explosive population growth put enormous strain on our water and wastewater systems. Ensuring those systems are up to date and working properly will require more skilled workers than ever before. While water services are local, these issues are global. They're faced by every water and wastewater agency. Our shared challenges are clear. How do we create a workforce that can reliably deliver services that people and the environment can count on, not only today, but in the future? Just as important as our physical infrastructure is our workforce infrastructure. We must attract, train, and develop qualified employees, from engineers to electricians, machinists, water treatment plant operators, and more. These challenges are too large for any one agency to take on alone. That is why 4 operations managers from the San Francisco Bay Area utilities came together in 2007 to discuss how they could encourage ongoing regional collaboration to solve shared problems. One result of that conversation was BAYWORK, a consortium of Bay Area water and wastewater utilities and stakeholders. BAYWORK's mission is to achieve workforce reliability by developing qualified candidates for mission-critical jobs, providing staff with the information they need to do quality work, modifying work process to optimize use of the available staff, and maximizing cost effectiveness of workforce reliability investments through collaboration. BAYWORK partners with schools, workforce investment boards, nonprofit agencies, unions, and other organizations on outreach, candidate development, and recruitment. Part of our outreach is done in person. Part is done through the wealth of information we provide on our website. Hiring the right employee for a mission-critical job is just half the battle. Every facility has its own technology and equipment. Every agency has its own policies, procedures, and approach. Every water or wastewater system includes numerous components and facilities that must work together. New facilities and technologies require specific training and information. Because of the increasing complexity of work and the rapid pace of change, even the most experienced staff members need continuous updates. At BAYWORK, we believe providing proper training, documentation, and knowledge management is essential for both new and existing workers. The knowledge of employees in mission-critical job categories is our most important asset. We are learning together about how to protect, build, and enhance it. We also embrace a spirit of innovation, helping agencies explore new ways to increase staff productivity and efficiency. Whether you are in California, Canada, Kyoto, or Kenya, no one agency has all of the answers or the resources to meet all of these needs. It takes ongoing collaboration, knowledge sharing and discussion. Utilities, educational institutions, unions, nonprofit organizations, workforce investment boards, and professional associations all have a role to play. Join the growing number of signatory agencies already helping each other through BAYWORK. We need you to help build the future of water.
Okay, we're back. So let me just, maybe I'll stop for a minute. Are there any burning questions so far? The next series of slides is more specific to some of the programs that BAYWORK offers, but are there any questions so far? I haven't seen anything in the chat, but.
Elizabeth, I had a quick question.
Sure.
When you talk about mission critical jobs, what does that mean to BAYWORK?
So that's a great question. You know, as I mentioned before, the sort of the bucket of occupations is really maintenance and operation trades, and they tend to fall into two sort of buckets. The sort of the maintenance trades, things like mechanic, machinist, electrician. Instrumentation has been, you know, a lot of discussion around the instrumentation trade, especially with the increased digitization of water. And in the other bucket are water operator, wastewater operator kinds of positions. So those are the trades that we tend to focus on. And we work closely with both community college-based trades training programs and where possible with union-sponsored apprenticeship programs to help prepare workers and to be quite honest, to help recruit workers from underserved communities into those training opportunities.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. Our partners. BAYWORK, as I mentioned before, can't do this alone, in part because other than the BAYWORK manager position, there are no paid staff of BAYWORK. BAYWORK is a pretty runs a pretty you know, tight ship and relies heavily on the support of agency leaders to like Robert Scott, who's the president, and a number of other leaders in the Bay Area. And one of the things that BAYWORK needs a lot of help with is certainly reaching communities of workers who may be interested in jobs in water and wastewater, and that's what JVS, Jewish Vocational Service, does in partnership with BAYWORK in the Bay Area. In the Inland Empire, JVS is also partnering with iWorks, and in a different way. JVS is really working to develop resources, write grants, draw down state and federal dollars to help support this work. And we subcontract out to local Inland Empire-based, community-based organizations. And then that leads to iWorks is, as I mentioned at the top of the presentation, our Inland Empire partner on this work. And then finally, and in some ways, most critically, the local community colleges who are offering the bulk of the technical training that workers need. So whether that is through paid internships, where we're pairing students who are in trades training programs with paid internships at local water and wastewater agencies, or whether it's partnering on apprenticeship and pre-apprenticeship training, or or whether it's supporting things like the CE credits and other kinds of professional development support that the community colleges sometimes can help us with as well. And then I mentioned Ignited before, a local Bay Area education-based nonprofit that supports our recruitment of teachers for the teacher externships. BAYWORK's work is really divided into two sort of buckets. The staff preparedness is sort of, you think of incumbent worker training. That's really what staff preparedness is. And some examples of that are digital worker efforts. We did a lot of, over the last couple of years, we've done a lot of research around the implications of the digitalization of water, and also, what are some of the competencies that we know that workers now need, and what will they need in the future, as there's more emphasis on whether it's AI or other sort of emerging trends in the industry. And then also the training buffet, which we'll talk about here more in a minute. And then the second bucket is really about new workers. Where the next generation of workers going to come from? And that really comes out of our candidate development and outreach efforts. And examples of that are Women in the Trades work group. We also typically we partner with community colleges or unified school districts on career fairs, veterans groups, that kind of thing. Regional training programs, which I'll talk a little bit more about in the teacher externships. Okay, so I'm going to dig into a few examples of our work here, and you'll see in each of the slides says, please type, in this case, WOW, W-O-W, in the chat, and that'll let me know whether I should talk more or talk less. So if you put a lot of stuff in the chat and saying, and type in WOW in the chat, I'll talk in more detail. Always obviously come back to it. Workshops on wheels. This picture is a really good example of what a workshop on wheels does. Now, what I'll also tell you is that it was very important and a very valuable thing pre-COVID. We haven't yet gone back to workshop on wheels in person. We have been doing some quote unquote virtual workshops on wheels. But in essence, what Workshop on Wheels does is it collects current workers in the industry, frontline workers, and they travel around for a day on a chartered bus and visit 3 or 4 agencies that are focused on, there's a theme to it typically. So let's say pump maintenance, and there's one, and there are agencies who say, hey, we've got some new technology that we're really excited about, or we have new training protocols that we're excited about, but it's all around a similar theme. We get 40, 50 people on a bus, drive around for the day, and see what those 3 or 4 agencies are doing in that particular area of work. It's great for workers to see what their peers are doing. Sometimes there's agencies that are next door that they may not be familiar with everything that those agencies are doing. And sometimes it has implications for what BAYWORK might want to focus on in terms of a future presentation. So that's those are workshop on wheels, right? Like I said, right now we've been doing those more virtually just because of COVID, but we're excited about getting people back on the bus and doing that. So let's see, looks like there's some chat activity there.
Yeah, a lot of people, Elizabeth, are typing wow, and one wants to bring it to schools next.
Yeah. So that's thank you for helping me with this, because one of the things that we also do is we've sometimes done teacher wows, where we've spent a day touring work sites with teachers, or the same with pre-apprentices. Especially during COVID, we had there was some resistance by a lot of water agencies to provide on-the-job training opportunities for students who hadn't yet obtained a lot of technical training, which is sort of the profile of a pre-apprentice. But what they did say is, hey, if you want to bring a busload of students out, or have students come out and see what we're doing, we'd be happy to do that. So we've done workshops on wheels for pre-apprentices and for teachers as well. And the agencies are sort of they eat it up, because it's a good way for them to sort of show off what they're doing, and it's a relatively light lift, assuming you're not in the midst of a COVID outbreak, of course.
And Elizabeth, it's finally an acronym we can all get behind and be excited about. I love it.
Yeah, it's great. It's we've had a lot of success with these the wows. We call them the wows. Okay, training buffet. This is another highly successful endeavor that BAYWORK has become quite famous for in the Bay Area, and it has been obviously impacted by COVID. Our training buffet for this year is going to be on November 8th through the 10th, and it's going to be a virtual event. And this training buffet is typically a 3-day event, and it offers a series of about 1 hour presentations on different themes. And so and one of the things that we do is sometimes we offer operator certification test prep classes as one of those classes. This year we're going to have 12 presentations over that 3-day period. So 2 in the morning, or 1 in the morning and 2 in the afternoon. I'm sorry, 2 in the morning, 2 in the afternoon, over a period of 3 days. And just to give you a sense of some of the topics that are going to be presented on this year are an HR presentation on effective conversations, employee resource groups, and the women of water. A third one called Nutrient Optimization Project, which is something that our water professional folks might know a bit about. Aquatic chemistry and surface water quality. And so you can see that the topics sort of are both sort of have an HR focus sometimes, have a sort of a incumbent worker professional development opportunity focus, and sometimes they're really more geared towards frontline workers and the kinds of issues that agencies are dealing with. So that's the training buffet. It's going to be all on Zoom this year, over 3 days. It'll be interesting. So people can hop in and out depending on what sessions they want to participate in. So anyway, that's the training buffet. And what's the chat look like? Nate?
Yeah,
Anything?
they're typing TB in there. Nothing expounded upon, just the TB.
Okay.
They're interested.
Elizabeth, I have another question. So BAYWORK is all volunteer based. How do you get people to commit to these powerful programs?
So you read my mind, because my next comment was going to be, just keep in mind that when I say 12 presentations in 3 days, BAYWORK is not paying one dime for any of those presentations. Basically, what we do is we put a call out to our 42 member agencies, and we say, what's something that's going on at your agency that's either HR related or operations and maintenance related that you really want to talk about? You have an hour. And so we get all these, ideas that, and sometimes we bring back sort of standard presentations that are always a big hit. And other times, I would say 2/3 of the sessions are relatively new. They're things that may not have been ever presented on, or maybe you're still current issues that we want to repeat. But it's, and sometimes we have to recruit people. I'm not saying it's, I think with this year, our goal was 12 sessions, and we had like 8 sessions come up pretty easily, sort of bubble up pretty easily. And, getting the last 5 or 6 is a little bit more difficult, but certainly it's also a good opportunity to highlight the work that we're doing with partners. One of the session that I am going to be helping to facilitate is bringing together representatives from one of our local community colleges, Laney College in Oakland, that has a really great machining program. And they've done some really good work with the water and wastewater industry in the Bay Area around training machinists. And they've also had some success at recruiting women for those jobs. So we're bringing together one of their graduates who's now machinist 2 at East Bay Mud, making, I don't know, $85,000, $90,000 a year with the leader of that machining program at Laney College. And that's what they're going to be talking about.
Elizabeth,
and what are your
we have a
attendance?
question.
I'm sorry.
We just have a question as to whether there's a cost to the training buffet.
There is not a cost to the training buffet. And in fact, we also offer, and I should have said this earlier, we offer continuing education certificates for most of BAYWORK's activities. And the training buffet is a really good example of that. So there's no cost to the training buffets. Remember that BAYWORK is a membership-based organization. And so when I refer to signatory agencies, BAYWORK has 42 signatory agencies. Each of those agencies is paying a fee based on their number of FTEs. So the larger agencies pay a higher fee, and the smaller agencies pay smaller fees. And those fees are what help to support some of the infrastructure that it takes to deliver on some of these programs. Any other comments that I should?
For your training buffets, have you always done them virtually? And if so, what are your attendance numbers? Have you seen those decline now that we're kind of at the 2-year plus mark of COVID and Zoom fatigue?
Okay, so that's a great question. Before COVID, we always did these in person. I don't know the number of attendees, but just having attended them, I would say that there typically are 200 to 300 people for the in-person event. One of our leading agencies, East Bay Municipal Utilities District, is fairly centrally located and has a large main office, and they hosted the training buffet using their conference facilities. So that was great. 1 year, the first year of COVID, we did not do the training buffet at all. Last year, we did resume doing it virtually. This year, we're doing it virtually. We're hoping that by next year, next fall, we can return to an in-person event. Although, as we all are finding out, there's value to a hybrid format. So how do we take advantage of the learning wins when you're in an in-person environment, with making sure that those agencies that maybe an hour and a half away may be reluctant to attend because of driving and other commitments. Any other thoughts about the training buffet? And if anybody's since it is virtual, if anybody is interested in signing up for the training buffet, I can also send Tiffany the link to signing up for the training buffet, and she can and her team can share that with you, because we're certainly open to anyone who wants to participate.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Elizabeth, for that offer.
Operator certification prep, pretty straightforward. Most of the agency folks will probably be familiar with these certification prep classes. The State Water Resources Control Board, obviously manages the testing process for a lot of these positions. But what we find out is that there's some people who may never, take the level 2-3 class or the level 4 class because they don't want to test for it. They're intimidated by the test. And even if they have the hours, they're intimidated by the test. But the agencies often really want those operators to continue to advance in their certification based on the kind of business model they have. So we offer in-person certification prep classes. There are a number of entities that offer online certification prep classes, by the way, but we do them in person, and encourage our operators in the industry to take those classes. Any questions or comments to respond to on that? Career fairs, again, this is probably something that most of you are familiar with. These career fairs are often sponsored either by a local community college, a local unified school district. There's one later this week, for instance, with that Oakland Unified School District is sponsoring. That is going to be really focused on younger students, high school age students, and it's an opportunity for people to learn more about the industry, to learn more about the kinds of jobs that are available in the industry. Some of these agencies, they go all out. Boy, they bring in these really fancy, like these big trucks and vans that have this these digital surveillance systems where they're sending basically a tube into a wastewater line and identifying where the clog is versus having to dig out the pipe and cut it and do all kinds of intensive work to it. They're able to monitor it digitally, and that's all stuff that, of course, young people just are they love to see that. It makes it really exciting for them to see that, as well as some of the more traditional kinds of work that happens in the industry. Any CF in the chat? Nate?
We have a question. If you could talk a little bit more about BAYWORKS before the end of the presentation, and who the contact person is at SBVC.
Okay. Yeah, sure. I'd be happy to. So you said, I'm sorry, you said BAYWORKS and what else?
BAYWORKS, and then who the contact person is at SBVC.
SBVC. Oh, Santa Barbara, San Bernardino Valley College. Yeah, I can talk about that and our partnership with SBVC as well. So let's see. Let me, can I, I'm going to go to those questions in a bit. Okay, let me just kind of run through a few more slides. Okay. Regional training programs. These are efforts, and this is related to both the BAYWORKS question and the SBVC question. Our regional training programs are really about sort of the next generation of workers, how BAYWORK partners with JVS, and in the case of the Inland Empire, the BAYWORKS is delivering similar training programs. So these are programs geared towards people who are not yet in the industry, who want to move into the industry. And so that's everything from apprenticeship and pre-apprenticeship that I mentioned earlier, to internships for students who are currently enrolled. And so those are what we call our regional training programs. And those regional training programs are really with, certainly with apprenticeship and with internship, the goal is to move people into entry-level positions as quickly as possible. I suspect most of you are familiar with the sort of the general concept of apprenticeship, which starts really with a job posting by an agency in this case, and JBS and BAYWORKS role is to help recruit people for those apprentice positions, and partnering with the community college and unions and employers, go through a selection process and enroll people concurrently in technical training, either at a community college or through a local union-based apprenticeship program, and then also have that apprentice obtaining real life on the job training through their employer. So that in the case of apprenticeship in both the Bay Area and in the Inland Empire, I would say we're making headway on apprenticeship. We're about to launch an operator apprenticeship in the Inland Empire in partnership with San Bernardino Valley College, and the contact there is Melita is her first name. Gosh, I'm blanking on her last name for a minute. I can check it out here. Melita Caldwell Betty's. Is Melita on the call? She might actually be on the call. Yeah. Hey, Melita. So Melita has been our leader and our staunch ally on the development of apprenticeship and pre-apprenticeship in the Inland Empire. And that program is set to launch in January, or I should say more accurately, sometime in the spring semester. We're hoping January. And we have 2 or 3 agencies that plan to post positions, apprentice positions in the Inland Empire for those operator apprentice positions. prior to launching that apprenticeship, we will have launched and completed one round of pre-apprenticeship training, and will be in the middle of a second cohort of pre-apprenticeship training. And those pre-apprentice cohorts are specifically designed to prepare people to apply for apprentice positions that will be posted after the first of the year. So those pre-apprenticeship training, in the case of this particular apprenticeship in the Inland Empire, is going to be offered by the technical training will be offered by San Bernardino Valley College, and the pre-apprenticeship training is also supported heavily by SBDC, and BAYWORK is also providing soft skills training for those pre-apprentices. I've already talked a little bit about internships. Anything else on regional training programs?
Going to
I
be
think
me
Tiffany
again,
has a
Elizabeth.
question.
I have a couple of questions, but I'll start with this question that continues to come up with at least SoCal industry folks. If we build these training programs, do we have enough jobs right now? Whether they're internships or apprenticeships, are we misleading students because we're not sure we have enough jobs? What is your experience with that?
I would say that is, to be quite honest, one of our chief concerns. What I would suggest to you is it's not so much in our experience, and this is true in both the Bay Area and in the Inland Empire. It's not so much that there is a lack of demand for these skills. The issue in our experience, and I would love for agency folks to chime in on this, is that very often agencies don't have the internal training capacity to supervise and train, whether it's interns or apprentices or pre-apprentices who need the on-the-job training or other types of entry-level positions. OIT is another example, operator in training. And part of that is that these water and wastewater agencies are running very lean when it comes to staff. And I think also there hasn't always been the kind of 3-5 year planning looking at retirement risk. So when they're posting positions, they're looking at, first of all, do I have the staff capacity to train this new person? And if not, then they're not posting an entry level position. They're posting, a journey level position. And that's where I think some of this regional training work gets stuck, to be quite honest. And sometimes I feel like community colleges that's one of the things that community colleges are rightfully wary about. And I think it's work that the industry needs to do to figure out a more effective way of preparing workers for entry-level positions that and so what does that look like? Does that look like providing more support to agencies to support the cost of those of that supervisor training that intern or training that apprentice? What are other ways that community-based organizations, community colleges, funders, and industry can work together to solve that issue? But at the end of the day, there are demands for those skill sets. So one of the things that we have done, to be quite honest, in the Bay Area, we haven't done this in the Inland Empire yet, although we may do this in the not too distant future, is partner with other what we call peer and adjacent industry sectors. So that might look like public transit or trucking, or advanced manufacturing. And guess what? They hire mechanics, they hire machinists, they hire instrument techs. They don't hire water operators, but they hire some of those other maintenance trades. And so and there's nothing makes a supervisor of mechanics at a water agency happier than to see a bunch of applicants who have experience working on car engines, because it's very relevant experience. So so that's one strategy that that JVS and our community-based organization partners have tried to implement to address some of that.
And I think that is a brilliant strategy. That was actually the second part of my question. We do have a statistic, maybe somebody knows it off the top of their head. I want to say it's only 15% of these water and wastewater jobs, even energy jobs, are with utilities. So if we're making up a fraction of the utility of the total jobs that are available, perhaps we need to look at it in a different way and think, if we can provide this training and we can look into complementary sectors so that these students can get the experience that they need, because that's the second problem, right? We have our human resources managers who are here to protect us, and there are a couple of things that need to happen, and we don't typically hire even entry level right out of high school. It's just not something that has happened and that others are comfortable with. But what if we train them to get the training that we need?
Yeah,
and I love that strategy. So thank you for illuminating that for me.
yeah. So anyway, but this is something that I would suggest that BAYWORK and iWorks and our community-based organization partners and community college partners have not necessarily come up with all the answers on. So I'm sort of giving you a sense of what some of the challenges are and how we've tried to approach it. But we're all ears in terms of other ideas. Women in the trades, need I say more? I'll give you one interesting example. I just mentioned public transit. Part of our partnership in the Bay Area is with San Francisco Municipal Transportation Agency. And they are one of a number of city agencies in the city and county of San Francisco that employ mechanics. In fact, the city employs about 200 mechanics across all their agencies: water, transit, airport, the whole 9 yards. 200 mechanics. Until about 2 years ago, 100% of those 200 mechanics were men, identified as men. And so through the pre-apprenticeship program that we partnered with SFMTA on, about a third of those pre-apprentices were women. And as a result, two of those women became machinists, one with San Francisco Public Utilities Commission, and one with the city's administrative services. She works in the fire shop, maintaining fire engines, and through the partnership with Laney that I mentioned earlier, Laney has hired a woman machinist as well. So those are some success stories. What we all know is that we have a long way to go in terms of improving the industry's record as it relates to women in the trades. And so this is something that we're dedicated to. Our community college partners have been a great partner, to work with on this. Our community-based organizations, especially those organizations that focus on women in the trades, and there are several, have been critical to the success as well. Nate, any questions on women in the trades?
No questions, just some agreement in the chat.
Yeah, I mean, to be quite honest, some of the training that some of the soft skills training that we offer to our pre-apprentices is, EEOC, sexual harassment kind of training. And that training is critical for everybody in the room, no matter how they identify in terms of their gender, to ensure that women are finding the work experience to be exhilarating and safe and challenging, just as any other tradesperson would want.
We do have a hand raised.
Hi,
Go ahead.
my name is Melita Caldwell Bettis. I apologize, I'm juggling 2 meetings, but I think this is very, very important. I just wanted to follow up. Someone asked about the San Bernardino Valley contact. Yes, I am. And I'd be happy to have a conversation outside this meeting with that particular individual. I also want to follow up on the request about training those students currently. That is actually the community college pipeline. That's the high school students. I just want to let the committee know that there are dual enrollment and concurrent options where students can actually enroll in, take our classes, even though they're in high school. Those classes are offered at the high school level. So we allow them to enroll in college. So what they'll do is they'll get college credit for classes while taking them. And I know the issue with the industry is them being 18 years of age. So I just want to kind of follow up on the issue, letting you know that there is a vehicle, a training vehicle that's active to train high school students. I think that was a question. Hopefully I'm answering it correctly.
Yeah, Melita, I couldn't agree with you more. And where there are opportunities for youth apprenticeship programs that use the high school curriculum to help prepare people for apprenticeship, and then support those students moving into full apprenticeship programs either before they graduate from high school or after. I think that those are great models, and we see our our partners in Europe have been doing it for centuries, right? Very successfully. So,
Elizabeth, there actually is a lot of conversation in the chat about women in industry and supporting culture of change. How are we going to make them feel safe? And is that something that BAYWORK also works on, training HR managers for a system change, understanding that when they're training our current workforce, that this needs to be different so that we feel like we're welcome in this space.
So that is such an important point. And I would say that it's another example of there's a lot of work to do in this area. Nonprofits like JVS and I should mention our Inland Empire community-based organization partners as well, the Inland Empire Black Worker Center, Operation New Hope, and the Lila Project have been, just to name 3. The nonprofit community has typically focused on what I would call the supply side of that equation, right? Where the new worker is going to come from, how training them to be prepared for those entry-level jobs. And then there is the demand side. Have we focused enough on supporting those industry partners to ensure that whether it's the actual work site is safe and welcoming to whether it's women or people from communities of color that are underrepresented. Are there hiring processes or procedures that work to disadvantage underrepresented communities? So for instance, assessment tests. A lot of agencies are moving away from those assessment tests because of that issue. Are there other things that the industry employers could be doing that would make the hiring process more equitable? And you know, this is certainly something that we're focusing on in our work in the Inland Empire. Further questions or comments?
No, just, you know, echoing what Tiffany said, just about preparing the culture for women to feel safe. And then also just a comment about high school counselors communicating that there is that opportunity for dual enrollment.
Because racial equity, diversity, and inclusion. This is work that this is actually relatively new work for BAYWORK. We've been working on women in the trades for a little bit longer, actually, than we have with this READY initiative, REDI. But I think some of the questions, some of the topics and questions that were just talked about come up for us every day. What are things that we can be doing to better prepare work sites and employers for a more diverse workforce, and also on the supply side, how do we make sure that the women and people from other communities that are underrepresented are just as qualified, if not more qualified, than other candidates, so that they stand out in the application and hiring process.
Do you currently have a program specific to READY? Or is this something that's ingrained in everything that you do?
Well, a little bit of both. We have a READY work group, and it is, like I said, it's just sort of just getting off the ground through BAYWORK. But I would say that the beautiful thing about IEWorks is that the equity and inclusion work is really baked into IEWorks from day one. So in the Inland Empire, we have, for instance, on the board at IEWorks, we have elected leaders from the boards of the participating agencies. And that's been a really helpful tool for us to keep the issue of equity and diversity first and foremost in our work. When we in the Inland Empire, when we wanted to subcontract out the community-based work, we looked specifically for organizations that were deeply embedded in the communities that we wanted to prioritize for services. That's how we got to the IE Black Worker Center and Operation New Hope and the Lila Project, because that's what they do. That's their expertise in terms of recruiting people for our programs. And then I would also say that on the community-based organization side of the ledger, a lot of our grant funding is dedicated to supportive services for those applicants, for those students. So whether it's money for a grocery bill, or helping to make rent, or getting a new tire for the car so that person can get to school or to work. We're really trying to identify those short-term financial needs that those students might need in order to be successful in training and or at work.
Elizabeth, we have a question specifically about opportunities for people with disabilities. Is there anything that is offered with that?
So most definitely, in terms of there are equal opportunities for, obviously, for people with disabilities. What I would say is that we haven't focused as much on people with disabilities as a priority group. We've focused more on women and people from communities of color. And that would include, obviously, people from those groups who have disabilities as well. But we certainly, one of the people that has been a huge success story in Northern California is a young man who sustained a head injury when he was young, and that certainly impacted his educational career, and we were able to really identify his strengths and his deep love for the machining trade, and supported him. And now he's another one of those machinists working at East Bay Mud, making north of $85K a year. BAYWORK Job Board. This is a great place for agencies to post positions, and I encourage you to go look at the BAYWORK Job Board when you get a chance. It's a lot about the trades, but you can just see just on the screenshot that there are a lot of different kinds of positions that end up on this job board. So it's a really great opportunity for agencies to post positions, and also for students and people in the community to find out about jobs. And it's sort of a central location. What's next? Certainly, BAYWORK is and iWorks as well are really dedicated to developing the current and next generation of water and wastewater workers. And one example of that is a partnership that we're a part of, that actually WEEA is also a part of, and that's this California Water, Wastewater, and Energy Workforce Development Program. This is a consortium that's led by the California Municipal Utilities Association, and it's a statewide effort to replicate the BAYWORK and iWorks models in other parts of the state. We've applied for funding, and we're waiting to hear more about the results of that solicitation. And the first step in, should we be awarded that funding, one of the first steps would be to really look at a statewide assessment of demand in the water industry, which sounds a whole lot like what WEEA is doing, is taking the lead on in terms of a salary survey, a survey of workforce needs around the industry within California, and we're hoping to leverage the results of that survey for our work statewide. And that's it.
Awesome.
I mentioned Robert Scott earlier. He's our president. Here's his contact information for interested in. He's another person that you can contact.
Yeah, thank you, Elizabeth, for an incredible presentation with a lot of great information and programs, initiatives for us to think about. I mentioned this a little bit early, and there's some conversation in the chat going on about CTE credentialed teachers, and how has BAYWORK addressed the paucity of CTE credentialed teachers?
So that's a great question, and it's yet another example of something that we've certainly experienced ourselves. Our community college partners rely on instructors who have sort of relevant education or relevant experience in the types of industries for which the courses that they're teaching are supporting. And
so, Elizabeth, if you're sticking with us, we're coming back at 10:48. I hope that you do.
Yes.
And again, thank you again. I know this was a really great deal for me, for you guys to agree to come and share with us what all the great work that you're doing up north.
Great, thank you.
I hope you had a nice break. You got a chance to stretch and be ready for our next segment, which is good news and announcements. I know that Kurt has something to share. So Kurt, why don't you get us started?
Sure. I guess I would share three things. The first is that in partnership with Kathy, who's here, and Project WET, who I don't think is here, we've redesigned the teacher trainings that we've been offering for quite some time, and they have a really strong CTE jobs connection theme running through them. Our guiding question is, how do you make resilient communities? And we work through models and the probability that if we can't get good jobs for everybody, we probably can't save the environment. So it takes a long time to get to those kind of conclusions. That's essentially what we're hoping to do. And we're connecting that through a variety of universities. Our first two trainings are in San Diego County. In fact, next Saturday, and then a second one sponsored by USGS down at their water exploration center next to the airport in San Diego County, where I might add, they've actually got the original Colorado River logs from John Wesley Powell. It's a pretty cool spot. There's more, but I'll leave it for other people at this point. But we finally got some San Diego trainings going from the good work of the Department of Water Resources, Kathy, Brian Brown at Project WET, and USGS as well. So good news for San Diego County and later for the rest of the state.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you, Kurt. Does anyone else have anything to share? I know, Adrian, you've been working hard on some stuff with Dale. Amanda.
Yeah, I think Amanda's first though.
Absolutely. I didn't see her hand. Thank you.
Sorry,
Amanda.
I was late. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Amanda Fine, Eastern Municipal Water District. Wanted to share that we've actually expanded our field trip options within our K through 12 program to focus. Usually our field trips have been at one of our reclamation facilities, but now we're providing tours to one of our water filtration plants and then our desalination complex. And our desalination complex, because it's a little bit more complicated, a little bit longer of a tour, is actually offered to high school students, and then those kids actually come back to our main office. They tour our lab, our integrated operations center, and then we have a career panel. So once they come back into our office, they get to chat with employees, and each week it changes to which employees. We usually work with the teacher to ask what the interest is for some of these kids, so they get a chance to see a face to the job, understand what that certification or education the employee went through, and get to meet face-to-face and make contact with those employees in the water industry.
Very good. I love that. You know, there are a lot of tour opportunities, but sometimes, in many cases, they don't invite folks that are younger than 18. So I love that Eastern is taking that step to do that, because we know when we tour facilities that it changes our perspective completely, and that you're following that up with a meet and greet is fantastic. Great work. I love it. Anyone else who'd like to share some good news?
Well, I'll jump in if you don't mind.
Thanks, Adrian.
Great. Hey, everybody. Good to see y'all. I missed y'all. It's been busy here. We have a new SRI office, Sustainability, Resilience, and Innovation, and we're building that up off the ground floor. I wanted to share two things with you, and I'll tag team with Dale. The first thing is we have a really interesting Day Without Water program coming on. We have opening remarks for our general manager and as well our new Chief Sustainability, Resilience, and Innovation Officer, my boss, Liz Crossan. And then we're opening it up to employees. So it's an open mic. You can share your water equity story or your water story. It's a little risky. I don't know if we'll get anybody, but I'm optimistic. So this will be a little different. I'll tell you how it goes. But something to engage staff and increase awareness and give folks a voice who might not normally speak. So that's one thing I wanted to share. It's kind of interesting. let me know if you have any questions. The second thing that I wanted to share, and then I'm going to kind of pass the torch to Dale, is that as you may know, this month is Cybersecurity Month. And our cybersecurity team has been busy really for different reasons. But this is the month where we increase awareness in our agencies and frankly in our schools about cybersecurity. And this is also the month where we're launching a new water cybersecurity internship program. We've been working for about a year with Tomorrow's Talent. Dale will tell you all about it. You're probably familiar with Dale. But I'll just say that the water industry has a specific need for cybersecurity internships, pre-apprentice and apprentice programs. Two really kind of distinct features is one, we're critical infrastructure. So it's not just a ransomware issue. It could really affect quality of life for lots of people. And the second thing is because we're a public agency, we frankly can't compete with the market in terms of what a lot of these professionals can command. We also have kind of stringent work requirements in terms of hybrid or non-hybrid or how we work. So it's really interesting that we have to establish a program with the expectation that if we can get 10% or 20% return, that's a big win. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Dale, tell you a little more about the program.
Hey, thanks, Adrian. And yeah, it's always a pleasure to be here with this group. And Elizabeth, wonderful presentation. It's good to see the advancement of the work and hearing continued great things. So our work got started actually in the Inland Empire as we were co-launching with the Launch Apprenticeship Network, the governor's effort to launch the cybersecurity apprenticeship in the Inland Empire. As you know, he has an audacious goal of 500,000 apprenticeships by 2029. And so in this work, we had very successful students in internships in water operations. And then we introduced our students to internship opportunities with East Valley Water District in cybersecurity and had our first pre-apprenticeship student go through that program, very successful. And so Adrian said, hey, what do you think? Can we pilot something here in Metropolitan in cybersecurity? And I said, let's give it a shot. And so what we have today is we've finally, working with LA Unified, located a pilot school where we'll have a teacher who will go through the entire programming to be brought up to speed on what is the industry demand for cybersecurity and how does he build that experience and curriculum in his classroom, working with a community college and even later the four-year university, so that we'll build this pipeline from internship to pre-apprenticeship to apprenticeship, getting students aware of what's available in their own backyard. You know, I was excited this summer to be invited to East Valley Water District as part of their board meeting. They welcomed new employees and they welcomed one of our students who started with us a couple of years ago, first year out of high school. David Rojas was hired as 1 year out of high school into a job paying $57,600 a year with full paid benefits. He's excited in an environment he didn't even know existed just a few short years ago. And so how about we get more kids excited at every level about the variety of careers available in the water industry and our public utilities and agencies. And so I want to compliment Adrian for his leadership on this. He has probably one of the most open teams I've seen. We went with his cybersecurity team and IT department, his media teams, and they're just absolutely all wanting to see these kinds of programs successful. So our goal is to take this pilot project and grow it like a wonderful thing throughout the reach of Metropolitan Water District and their partner agencies. So stay tuned for great news. We hope to bring you some students and their testimonies here soon.
Yeah, that is
Now we have a
amazing.
question in the chat. We had a question in the chat specifically about the LAUSD school. Is that partner confidential?
Is the partner confidential?
No, the name of the school is Narbonne, and this is a school that's immediately next to our new Pure Water SoCal effort. So we're proposing the largest recycled water plant in cooperation with Los Angeles County Sanitation. It would be at 150 MGD in full completion, the largest in the nation. And it would significantly impact the city of Carson. So our initial plan was to have a workforce development strategy that benefits that community. This is kind of the first step. Starting with Narbonne, but there's a lot of flexibility, and frankly, there's a lot of funding out there. So we're really interested in partnering and growing this. We'll see how this first year goes, but yeah, no, thanks for the question.
Yeah, keep us all posted on this new step forward. I mean, you've thought outside of the box. We have our mission critical jobs that we're always kind of talking about, and the CTE issues that we have. But when you talk about cybersecurity, this is this generation's language. So I can already see where the excitement may be. And then, yes, we do have some challenges when it comes to competing, but there aren't that many jobs at Google, are there? We still have a really great industry that offers a lot of cool benefits. So kudos to you guys for continuing that, and let us know how we can help, or if you want to expand and you want to talk about what that might look like. We're very excited to hear that. Anybody else have any good news to share? Good news. Hey, we got back on track pretty quickly. All right. So next up from our good news and announcements, we're going to go into our breakout rooms, and we're going to do something a little bit different this time. I see that we've lost a few people, and I know that the Zoom experience, we've all been doing it for so long. It's easy to fill up your calendar with things that you want to do, all of these things, because they're all great. So we appreciate those of you who have been with us and those who are continuing on with this group discussion. So we have had our regional leads. Some of them were not able to attend today. Some of them may be moving on to something else, and that's a discussion that they would share if they did. So we thought, well, how are we going to do our group discussion? Shall we keep it regional? We know that there were some, we're getting real comfortable in our regional groups, so we kind of wanted to mix it up a little bit. And again, you guys are leaders in this work, and we really want to empower you to feel confident going out into the world and leading discussions like this. It may not be something that you're used to doing, but I can tell you that when you start getting your momentum, and when you start having these great things to share, or these great ideas, working in these work groups with people who are on your side and who are rooting for you and who are there to support you, it couldn't be a safer place. So we're going to randomize the breakout rooms. So they're not going to be by region this time. And we're going to call for 2 volunteers. And the first volunteer is simply going to guide the discussion. So reading the group discussion questions 1, 2, and 3, and guiding the conversation. And the second person is going to do a brief share out, just what you heard from the meeting that you think that this group would benefit from. And we're going to break out into 4 groups. That's determined by the number of participants we have left. And my team is going to take notes. So we'll be there to support you during the conversations, but mostly we're there to capture it. So if you'd like to log in to the Padlet so you can type your own notes, this is the link for that. There's also a QR code so you can join if you're on your mobile device. Otherwise, we're going to go ahead and break out into our breakout rooms and call for volunteers. Okay, it looks like everyone's coming back. Nirmala, I'm so sorry. You got cut off at the very end there, and I was really interested in hearing your final point about inviting water districts to schools, and you could easily find people.
Well, I was just, this was actually Nicholas Dibb's idea about having a program at a specific school every week or whatever it is. But instead of, putting all the work on one water system to do that, you could have different people sign up, different organizations, right? So I'm saying it could be even DWR, who would attend sign up for a month or whatever, twice a year, or whatever it is. And then you'd spread the work out. So it wouldn't have to be one water system every single time doing the visits.
Sounds good.
No, let me, Tiffany, just for the group so that they, the suggestion was that water agencies get together and have an outreach table, a booth at lunchtime in the quad at each high school, and you could rotate it around, as Nirmala was saying, between different water agencies. I think that's a great idea.
So this was group one. Nick, I brought up our notes. Did you want to volunteer to kind of share out some of the fine points in our group?
Well, Amanda, was she the
led our
leader?
conversation. I'm asking for 2 volunteers.
Okay, well, I don't know if I'm the best one, but we had a really lively interaction and discussed a lot of things. It was also brought up that the teachers have too much to do. The water districts have their duties. What steps can we take in the immediate future to get the ball rolling? Of course, there's a shortage of CTE teachers. So the question is, what can we do now? And some ideas were brought up and discussed. And Tiffany, I don't know if I'm the best one to summarize this because I wasn't planning on it.
You're doing great.
So I think you mentioned that the MODOC is doing what they can for outreach and so on. So it's a combination of things. Emily brought up of getting the nonprofits involved and then getting funding as best we can through donors. They're just different ideas. The question comes down to what can we do concrete wise. So that's about it. Tiffany, if you want to weigh in and add some more, that would be great.
I'd love to weigh in. I'm wondering if anyone else from group one has anything to add.
Hey, Tiffany, it's Amanda. I think I don't want to summarize it all with this one statement or be cliche with it, but I think a lot of our discussion kind of came around with, let's not reinvent the wheel. Let's take some of the existing programs, initiatives, staff, nonprofits that are already out in the community, and to the point you kind of made in there, figure out who's going to make that first step. Who is going to take a plan and start initiating to chip away at the small things? Because when you take a look back and look at everything that needs to be done to implement a really comprehensive program that builds pathways and career options, it's overwhelming. And so I think groups like WEEA and other nonprofits and other districts coming together to really discuss what works best ultimately is our best first step. And then going from there.
Yeah, I think that's great. Thank you, Nick and Amanda. That's a great summary. You know, we discussed the different challenges that both sides have, right? Like we've got educators that have the things that they need and industry that has the things that they need. And we've been talking about this for a while, and that's why WEEA exists, because we need to figure out what those gaps are and work collectively and collaboratively to fill those gaps. And so things like these quarterly meetings. In the meantime, what else can we do? Are there ways that we can partner? Can we determine, for me, and this is something that I brought up, there are some pretty significant things we've been talking about for a while. If we can tackle one big thing, right? How do we get some CTE credentialed teachers? Maybe that's the thing. And then we move on to the next thing. Because we're chipping away with the limited time and resources that we have from both sides to try and just move step by step, inch by inch forward. And using some wonderful partners like Ignited, who receive funding from another place, and then just saying, okay, how can we work together? This is what I have to offer, to again move just one step forward, just one step forward. I mean, we'll get there eventually if we keep moving.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add to that is, Tiffany, I feel like, right, with this group, you have started that. This is the purpose of this group, is to have this collective knowledge, and let's all focus our energy and attention on one aspect of this ginormous problem. And if we are able to focus together, I think we'll be able to have more collective impact. So thank you for starting it, the group.
I wish I did start it. It's actually Bill Andrews, if he's around.
He is.
In 2000.
Bill, thank you.
You know I love me some Bill Andrews. You know I love you, Bill.
Thank you, guys.
Bill Andrews started WEEA in 2018. And due to a couple of different issues, we assumed leadership in 2020. And I think, you know, for me, that's always been the thing. I love my job. I love what I do. I love all the things about my job, but I have to feel like I'm going somewhere. I can't feel like I'm sitting still. And if this helps, these conversations help, this meeting helps us, then I'm all in, and I'm thrilled to have been handed the keys from such a visionary. So group 2, we have our.
All right, Tiffany. So that's me. This is Kurt talking, and I'm humbled to try and represent the brilliance of the group I was in. But I think I want to start with where group 1 was, which this business of expanding the coalition, and a couple of people talked about different ways to do that within our existing zone of influence. So if you've got access to unions, go for them. But also that there are some non-traditional partners, and Bill calls it out of the box. But the Police Athletic League, for example, is very interested in supporting financially and otherwise pre-apprenticeships to feed into unions. And Stephanie had some good examples of work that's happening out in the IE that they're doing. And I think a second major point would be, how do you take a trickle to a flow? And personally speaking, for me, I think we do need to focus on getting more teachers to honor and respect the trades. That's what I would do as job 1. But the group talked a lot about bringing students to agencies, and the reverse of agencies going to schools, but really focusing on sort of what's within our competency. We can, several people said, well, that's not that hard. We're already doing it. So the question becomes, how do we scale it to other areas? Sorry to end that point with a question. Then there was a rich discussion about engaging with local leaders. We had Jasmine on the call, and she's both a thought leader and an elected official of some kind. And Jasmine, you'll have to tell me, I missed that in my notes. But we thought that was a really strong strategy for expanding our influence, because once they understand the critical infrastructure needs, plus the opportunity to serve youth across the spectrum from achievement gap kids to college bound, then you really have something, which leads to sort of the fourth point that I heard. And with this, I'm going to go silent so group 2 can elaborate and make corrections. But we thought we really needed some unified messaging. If you're going to go to political leaders and others who have their hands on the purse strings, then it's going to be good working within this organization and others to get ourselves onto a very clear, unified message. So with that, Jasmine, why don't you jump in and just tell us where you're from? Because you made a million good points, and then anybody else from group 2.
No, I'll let the others start, and then I will add in. But I am from the Inland Empire Utility Agency on the board of directors. And I was more or less speaking from who I am as a volunteer, but a public servant, and how I reach and connect the people that I represent. I go to them, I go to where they are, and then I share with them about what I am doing to help them. And so exchanging that information, if I'm hearing that there are young adults that are interested in careers but have no pathway or need to have a connection of a mentor, that's my role, as to try to connect them and bring them together. And as I have a small budget that I provide, where if I work with the schools, that I can be able to provide a school bus to bring them to our agency on Earth Day. But we can expand this, not just Earth Day, but we can have a plan that I heard several people talk about.
And Jasmine, you said something really critical in there, which is go to where they are. Yes. And not all those kids are happy in school. Not all the kids are happy in dual enrollment. Not all the kids are happy in any one place. So that's this really essential piece that you talked about. If you want equity, you got to go to where these kids are. And that could be an after-school program, for example. Other group 2 folks.
I love it. I love that, Kurt. And let me just stop for a second and say, Jasmine has given us the perfect example of what you can do in your role. I think some of us who may not be elected officials may feel powerless. We're waiting for HR to do something, or we're waiting for someone else to do something. but this is a perfect example of in her role, what she's able to do.
Yeah.
When you take a look at what you do, how can you help move the initiative forward? How can you participate and make sure that we're providing equitable access to all students to these incredible jobs? What can you do?
Yeah. And Stephanie, Sarah, other folks, you had lots to offer, and I'm sure I didn't do justice to it.
One thing we talked about also was where we're trying to bring teachers in for externships. We have an opportunity with our operators now. I get asked all the time by our operators, if I could teach, how do I do that? How can I go and be a teacher? Or our retired operators who are exiting, the silver tsunami, if they don't, have amazing travel plans, maybe they want to teach in their retirement years. So that might be, we think a lot about how do we get more teachers doing the CTE work, and we might have them sitting right in front of us in our organizations. And if we can build some sort of pathway for them to be teachers, that might help, build it from both sides.
Well said. Anybody else? Group 2, going once, going twice. And thanks again, Elizabeth, for that phenomenal presentation. We had the benefit of having her for a second time, so that was cool.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you, group 2. Group 3. Who's going to share out from group 3? I have notes for you, so it should be easier. Anyone from group 3 want to be brave? Who do we have from group 3 still on the
I think I was group 3, possibly. Yes. Okay.
All right.
So a lot of what we had to share was the same from groups 1 and 2. A lot of concerns about, we all know what needs to happen, but who has the capacity to make it happen? And the answer was nobody. So understanding how to use resources more wisely, how to get to the right people to establish resources, make sure that time is available for that, both from education, there is a huge staffing issue there. In energy, there is a huge staffing issue there. And so while we all know what could happen, making that happen is incredibly difficult. I work for Department of Water and Power, which is civil service. There's difficulties relating to the civil service process that those of us on this call aren't really in a position to address. And a lot of the challenges that we face can't be really resolved unless we address those things. And then we just kind of talked about streamlining coalitions, being smarter about where we're having these conversations, and bringing all of the people into one place so that there's not little silos all over the place.
I love that. I love that. Let's break down these silos. That's one of the reasons that we created those career brochures, because there should be nobody who doesn't have access to have something to hand to a student and say, we have these careers. We're happy to share them. We're happy to create them. And I think there's a lot of people who are willing to share what they have. Elizabeth, as one of them, sharing with us what BAYWORK's doing. Don't keep that to yourself. If it's something that you think can benefit others, let's try and build it. I love it. Thank you.
So Tiffany, can I build on that for a second?
Please.
And Janet herself is making me think about this, because one of the things that worked best in my high school and middle school and college classrooms is putting strong, bold women in front of these girls and young women. So as we decide how to expend our resources, every engineer is not created equal. Every welder is not created equal. There's a bountiful research that if you make the world safe for women, you've actually made it safer for almost everybody except traumatized youth. So that could be a point of focus, is my assertion.
Great point. Great point.
Absolutely. That is what I wander around my workplace marching about. Is, if we address the culture concerns of the women, guess what? We address the culture concerns of everyone.
No, and it's true it's true across the planet. Empowered women create pro-social outcomes, and you're going to be coming to talk to a college class pretty soon if you're not careful, Gianna.
I'd be happy to.
I don't see how addressing women deals with race at all.
because women tend to be concerned about those things, quite frankly. So like our tradeswomen group, so I run the employee resource group for tradeswomen at DWP. I would say a solid half of our work is equity related and spans the entire workforce rather than just women. We tend to be nurturers. We tend to recognize when people are struggling, particularly if it is struggles that are similar to what we have faced. And so when we are trying to address things, it is rare that we are addressing a women's issue that doesn't also benefit someone else.
Yeah, but the women in our industry are white mainly. There are not many women of color.
So
And that's
at
why
least
we need you guys.
Yeah,
right?
at least at the
That's why we need
department,
you.
it tends to not be white women. We do have a void of Black women, but otherwise it tends to be pretty diverse. I think often because tradespeople tend to come from communities that they themselves are rising out of poverty. And so they are less likely to be white people, frankly. And so at least in the trades, I find that to be true.
Yeah.
And where there's also a void, from my experience at least, is in the general manager and the assistant general manager roles in most water and wastewater agencies, where there is a dearth of women in those roles, regardless of their ethnic background, and which makes me wonder sometimes whether we should be focusing on diversity, equity in the engineering schools, right? Because that's where the GMs and the AGMs often come from, right? And it's not our issue necessarily, but I do think we ought to highlight that in some way as well.
So there are
Elizabeth,
7 steps between. Oh, go ahead.
Let's not
Elizabeth, to that
pretend it's
point,
happening. Let's not pretend it's happening now. This is something we're striving for. I was on the BAYWORK Women in Trades Committee for a year, and they were going to do a panel. And the first time I watched, I had just joined, there were 5 white women. So the next time they did the panel, I said, I know a Black operator, young, let's get her on there. So the next time they included her. The next time, 6 months later, I was in a different meeting. They went back to 5 white women. No, there was 1 Latino. So let's not pretend that these committees who are focusing on women are also focusing on race. And honestly, it's 2 different groups with different nuances. I'm just saying the race thing is difficult. It's a difficult conversation, and people are not necessarily focusing on it in many committees. And we need to. I think everyone here realizes we need to, but it's not happening. In most cases.
Nirmala, to your point, you're absolutely right. I can feel your passion right now. I can feel it teeming off of you, and I get that. I think what we're saying is that this has been a problem forever, and it's been a problem for people of color, and it's been a problem also for women. And there's some sort of connection there where we at least understand that we're struggling, and that struggle can be together if we choose to unite. Because I know that the inequities that I feel, I can't imagine what that would be with someone with double, triple what I have. I mean, look at me.
Black woman. Yeah.
some of the issues, like I feel like I have some things to say, but look at me. How many people are saying that girl needs to speak on our panel about diversity, equity, and inclusion? But you don't know my history. I was very poor and grew up in very poor neighborhoods. And this to me, where I'm at today, is a success. And I want that for everybody who struggles with poverty, whoever that may be, who struggles with being equal and having equal opportunities, whoever that may be. And I think that we aren't there yet. You're so right. I feel your passion. We aren't there yet. And I am with you, but we're working there. We're trying. We're taking steps forward. And if we can have more women in your position, in Jasmine's position, in other positions who say we are here and we have something to say and it's important and we're making moves forward together. You have a route. We're rallied behind that. If we can't be in the position up front, trust me, we're right there by your side. So,
and I will say too, Nirmala, that when I'm asked to speak at something, so I was actually asked to speak at this Department of Labor event that I had attended, and I made a point to instead connect them with a woman of color. And in my mind, I consider, because my own experience tends to be pretty racially diverse, I don't necessarily, aside from the fact that we are seriously lacking in Black women, it's not necessarily something in our recruitment of women that I prioritize. But I recognized that speaking at a nationwide event to the energy sector, that that was a group that needed to see representation of a tradesperson that was not a white middle-aged woman. And so I intentionally sought out women that had some more intersections. But I appreciate, honestly, your feedback, because here in California, like I said, my experience in Southern California at Department of Water and Power has been pretty diverse. And so I assumed that was the case across the state. But I do appreciate like acknowledging that even here in California, that we need to be better.
And you know what? Let's continue to have these honest conversations. I mean, I would love to join meetings where we're actually having honest conversations and we're not afraid of each other. And I don't know if Benita Horn is on this call still, or
She had to leave.
jump off.
Yeah,
She had to leave.
Yeah.
We did a workshop together with her and a metropolitan contractor on diversity, equity, and inclusion. Again, I'm not the person to lead that conversation, but I'm there to support it. And we reached out and offered that free. So there are ways that we can work together to advance everybody. And if you have an idea or a thought about that, please share that and share it with the boldness that you are, because there are many of us who to us, it's not confrontation, it's honesty. And we're here to have those conversations and make things better. I just wanted to throw that out there, that I know, you know, it might seem sometimes that you're alone fighting this fight, but you're not. Cool. And thanks everybody else for hanging in there with us when we went down that path, but it's an important path to take. Group 3, we good? We want to do group 4?
Yeah, I can. I was the group 4 presenter. I can jump in. Just had to unmute. Sorry about that.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Absolutely. So I know we're at 12, so I'll try to skim over what we did and hit the high points here. We talked a lot about the programs that we liked, really seemed to focus on the ones that can get out to high schools, right? We like the regional training program, the vehicle, the workshop on wheels, those things. And so getting the information and the outreach to the students, like Kurt was saying, going to where they are, as opposed to trying to get them to come to whatever the outreach experience is, we think is really the way to get to them. So really getting out to the schools. And then also we talked about wanting to see, we saw the women in trades, but then also wanted to see a focus on racial equity. We talked about that in our group, especially around like targeted advertisement and outreach, just sending out stuff that targets those groups, for women, for young, for every area we're trying to target, the advertising can work. Under the second question for what might we need to implement a similar program or initiative, one of the things that came up was the idea of needing help navigating the complex system of setting up events and programs like this. We said it's not easy for an engineer maybe to jump into this world of event coordination and program establishment and all that. So the support needed from others might be help, navigating that, help with calendaring things, help with making sure that things happen on that kind of like secretarial help for those people who aren't as versed in that world. And then our last one for number 3, what action steps would we need to take? We talked about getting in touch with, ready, willing, and able high school students and teachers to get those teachers who can help, or to get those students who are going to jump right in the program. We also talked a lot about mentoring people who are wanting to get into the water industry, even before they actually start a program, before they've taken a college course, to show them what it is that they want to do so that they can navigate that easily and, smoothly, not without having to go back and restart and do again. But somebody to say, oh, okay, if you want to do this, then you need to take these steps to get there, because there isn't really a roadmap like that for all the various parts of the water industry.
You are right about that. Another thing that we need to absolutely consider, how now we've engaged these students, do they understand what the process is? What's next? And if we're not hiring entry-level students, what is their next step? You know, or if we are, yay for us for again being bold and taking the step to say, hey, we're going to take a chance on these young people. What can they expect? It's a very scary thing. If you remember back to you being in high school, I'm not sure if you remember exactly the moment where you're like, that's what I'm going to do. I didn't know that until I was 40 years old. So, you know, it's a difficult process anyway. So having a roadmap would be a great one. So thank you, everyone. I know we're up against the 12 o'clock hour. I just wanted to share one last thing. Here's our breakout. Obviously, thank you to our sponsors who allow us to continue to give you resources that matter. We're going to continue to work for this. The brochures that we shared with you, one of our deliverables this year is creating them in different languages, because it's great to have them in English, but let's have them in other languages so we can address some of the issues that we talked about today. Our next leadership roundtable meeting is a date to be determined, but I'm going to keep you in the loop because this is our Centers for Excellence for Labor Market Research survey, where they're going to tell you all about the process and give us hopefully some answers that we need and some recommendations for moving forward. So that's what we have today. Thank you all for attending and participating. Please reach out and let me know if you have any questions or if there's anything that you're thinking about that maybe we didn't cover today and you'd like to share.
Thank you, Tiffany, and everybody for putting this on. Thank you.
Thank you, Tiffany. Thank you, Elizabeth, for the compelling presentation. Bye, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.